Imagine I put on a pair of red sunglasses and then stare at your face, exclaiming, "Wow, why does your face look so red?" You'd probably laugh at me, thinking I've lost my mind. But now I have another pair of psychological glasses. When I put these on, I start berating you, telling you that you're bad at everything and incapable of holding a proper conversation. This time, you might not immediately refute me. In fact, you might even pause for a second and wonder, am I really that bad at speaking? These glasses distort my perception of the world. You can call them what they truly are: projection. Simply put, projection is when a person unconsciously transfers their own thoughts and feelings onto others. An insecure person sees malice in every glance. A liar suspects that everyone around them is deceiving them. There's a brilliant phrase that encapsulates this phenomenon. Your endless interpretations and judgments of me do not define even 1% of who I am, but they do reveal 100% of who you are. From the moment we take our first breath, we are trapped in the projections of others, judged by fragmented experiences that are not our own. But at the same time, projection shouldn't become a universal excuse to dismiss criticism. So in this discussion, let's break it down. What projection is, its consequences, and how to distinguish between harmful projections and constructive feedback that can actually help us grow. By the end, I hope you can answer this question with clarity. Should I even care about this person's opinion? If you find value in this discussion, don't forget to like and subscribe. The experiment that proved projection exists. In 1974, psychologist Stephen Bauer conducted an experiment where he invited two groups of college students. One group watched a comedy, while the other watched a horror film. Afterward, both groups were asked to interpret a neutral facial expression in a photograph. The results? The students who had watched the comedy perceived the face as happy, while those who had just watched the horror movie believed the person looked anxious and afraid. This is projection at work. Everything we perceive is filtered through our mindset, past experiences, and personality. The external world is often nothing more than a mirror, reflecting who we are. Take this classic example. There's a kind of hunger called "Mom thinks you're hungry." In this case, the mother projects her own hunger onto her child, shaping reality to fit her feelings. Projection manifests in two primary forms. Simple projection, which exists solely in our imagination and doesn't significantly impact reality. Projective identification, which takes things a step further, incorporating subconscious manipulation and the recipient's acceptance of the projection. For example, imagine a socially anxious person who, before sending a message, already envisions the recipient laughing at them, rejecting them, or even recalling past embarrassing moments. These scenarios exist only in their mind and reveal nothing more than their own insecurities. But if this same person starts behaving in ways that provoke others, acting distant, defensive, or confrontational, people may actually begin to dislike them. Eventually, the anxious person might say, "See? I knew the world didn't like me." This is how projective identification alters reality, a self-fulfilling prophecy born from our subconscious expectations. The four most common projection patterns. Projection takes on many forms in the real world. To identify it accurately, you need to understand some of the most common projection scripts. Here are four classic ones. Mirror assumption. I want to target you, so I assume you are targeting me. Hostility assumption. I don't like myself, so I assume you are targeting me. Inferiority rebound. I don't like myself, so I target you. Role assumption. I must play role A, so you must play role B. Sounds like a tongue twister. Let's break them down. First, mirror assumption and hostility. Assumption. You are targeting me. The mirror assumption states, I want to target you, so I assume you are targeting me. The hostility assumption states, I don't like myself, so I assume you are targeting me. Both lead to the same conclusion. You are against me. When a person cannot acknowledge or process their emotions, they are likely to engage in psychological blame shifting, turning their inner distress into an external problem. This way, they comfortably settle into the role of the victim. Take romantic relationships as an example. Research shows that people who frequently lie are more likely to suspect their partner of lying. This phenomenon is known as deceiver's suspicion. In the workplace, an insecure and jealous coworker may convince themselves that you are intentionally suppressing them, even if that is far from the truth. As the recipient of projection, you often experience it in the form of accusations. One way to detect this is by recognizing your own sense of being wrongly accused. That feeling of, wait, I never did that. You don't have to engage with such people. If you react in anger, you might actually be playing into their narrative. The moment you lash out, the projector wins. See? I knew it. I am the victim. You are targeting me. Second inferiority rebound. I don't like myself, so I attack you. And just like that, the cycle of projective identification is complete. Here, the projector is no longer the victim, but the aggressor. By attacking others, they divert attention from their own insecurities and experience a fleeting sense of superiority. Examples of inferiority rebound include bullying in schools, harassment in the workplace, domestic abuse. British anti-bullying activist Tim Field explicitly defined projective bullying as a compulsive need to displace internal frustrations onto others. By controlling and oppressing their target, the bully momentarily relieves their own feelings of inadequacy. For example, a father who has failed in his career may lash out at his son, yelling, "You will never amount to anything." In doing so, he transfers his own insecurities and failures onto the child, who, being highly impressionable, is likely to internalize this message. The next time someone aggressively puts you down, pause and think. Are they speaking about you or about their own fears? Psychotherapist Susan Forward identified 3 key tactics of emotional blackmail. Fear. Something terrible will happen if you don't comply. Obligation. Not doing this means you're failing as a parent-child partner. Guilt. Look at how much I suffer because of you. Blackmailers first amplify fear, making the victim feel powerless. Then they impose obligation, framing compliance as a moral duty. Finally, they trigger guilt, shifting responsibility for their suffering onto the victim. For sensitive individuals, guilt can easily spiral into self-blame. If a relationship constantly fuels guilt or fear, it's likely toxic and unbalanced, the ultimate defense against projection. At the end of the day, projection is everywhere. But does that mean we should dismiss all external opinions? That would be too convenient. A shield against all criticism. However, rejecting every perspective can also lead to arrogance and stagnation. What if some of those difficult words are actually crucial lessons for growth? Here are 4 guiding principles I use to determine whether criticism is valuable. Growth principle. Would improving in this area benefit me? If yes, then it's worth considering. Responsibility principle. Is this genuinely my responsibility? Manipulators often pile extra burdens on you. Boosting company profits may be great, but is it your job under a low salary? Respecting elders is admirable, but can one person truly satisfy an entire family's expectations? Growth matters, but so do boundaries. We'll explore this further in a future discussion. Specificity principle. Is the criticism specific and actionable? Vague complaints are useless. Expression. Principle. Is it communicated rationally and respectfully? A great insight wrapped in hostility is still unpalatable. If feedback passes these 4 tests, then maybe, just maybe, it's not a projection, but an insight worth embracing. Think back to the last time you received criticism. Was it a projection, or was it a mirror reflecting something you needed to see? Third role. Assumption. I must be role A, so you must be role B. This projection script is more complex and often plays out in intimate relationships under the guise of love. 3 common forms of role assumption include dependency-based projective identification. I can be independent, but I insist on making you take care of me to prove that you love me. Power-based projective identification. I feel powerful, so I must control and belittle you, making you believe you can't survive without me. Approval-seeking projective identification. I sacrifice myself for you, expecting gratitude in return. Let's break them down further. Dependency-based projection. At first, being needed feels rewarding, but over time, the constant reliance becomes exhausting. The dependent person appears vulnerable, making rejection difficult as their partner fears hurting them. Power-based projection. The exact opposite. The projector seeks to dominate, constantly issuing orders and undermining their partner's confidence. Their core belief: without me, you are nothing. They are driven by deep insecurity and maintain control by keeping their partner emotionally dependent. Approval-seeking projection. The hallmark of self-sacrificing projection is guilt-tripping. Phrases like, "I've done everything for you," are designed to manipulate the recipient's sense of guilt, making them feel obligated to comply. At their core, all 3 patterns are dysfunctional role-playing dynamics, where one person dictates the other's role. The dependent needs the caregiver. The power holder needs the submissive. The self-sacrificer needs the grateful one. To maintain these unhealthy relationships, projectors often introduce threats, implying, "You have no choice but to comply or else." The next time someone offers criticism, don't immediately label it as projection. Instead, ask, "Could this actually help me grow?" Final thoughts. The lens we choose to wear. During holidays, we often wish others, "May all your dreams come true." Interestingly, projective identification might be the scientific foundation of this wish. Our self-perception unconsciously shapes our actions and interactions with others. The more we accept and appreciate ourselves, the more likely we are to project warmth onto the world. This, in turn, invites positivity back into our lives, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of optimism and connection. In this grand game of projection, some people will try to shape you into their fears, their doubts, their limitations. But the strongest minds resist external narratives and focus on illuminating their own path. And so, I leave you with one final lens, one last filter of perception. Maybe it's just an illusion. Maybe it's a distortion. But I've heard that whoever puts on these glasses will see one truth and one truth only. I am unstoppable.